Hello everyone, my name is Abhi Sastry, and welcome to the State of the Game podcast presented by FLUIX LLC. We have a really interesting topic today, and we have an even more special guest joining me, my co-founder, Eduardo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi Abhi, it's good to see you. We have been working, but from home.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, we can spend some time.
Exactly. Eduardo and I have been working really hard on FLUIX for the last couple of years, and we've been working remotely, just like you said. So it's finally great to have you here in the same place, in the same studio, if you will. So if the audience doesn't know a little bit of background of Eduardo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Eduardo, and how long ago? Like a year or two, we decided to
about two years now.
We decided to work on this, and it has been a great experience.
Exactly.
We met at the university.
Yeah.
I'm a mechanical engineer, and we are trying to create cool things, and hopefully that's gonna help people as well.
But before we get into our topic for today, and I'm so glad that Eduardo has joined us, we have some recent news. So in the last couple of weeks, so many things have been introduced in the gaming space. EA announced a new Skate 4 game, which we're really excited about. And FIFA 21 will be released in October. So you're a fan of FIFA, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, awesome.
I used to play it when I was a kid.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to play the new one when it comes out. That's great to hear. And for a couple of weeks now, people had the chance to play The Last of Us 2, which was released on PS4 and PS5. And the reviews aren't doing so great, but we'll wait and see what the final verdict is. In the hardware news, Computex, the hardware conference that everyone's looking forward to, is unfortunately canceled for 2020 and has been rescheduled for 2021. I know a lot of tech YouTubers, us as hardware enthusiasts and gamers, were looking forward to it. So I guess we'll have to wait until 2021 to go to the conference, and that's pretty exciting. It's in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in other hardware news, the Ryzen 4000 series, AMD said that it's going to come out soon. But for now, we are stuck with the Ryzen 3000 XT, which is the same Ryzen 3000 processors, but they're a little bit faster, but they're for the same price. So I guess AMD, we don't mind that at all. Thank you so much. Something that we forgot to talk about last week, actually, NVIDIA's RTX 3080, the images have been leaked. We don't know if there's the right reference design, but it seems they have a new cooler design, which is really interesting. So if you guys want to check out any of the topics that I'm talking about right here in the recent news, go down in the description. I'll leave some links. But other than that, Eduardo, I'm so glad you can join me. Our topic for today, the state of what it means to be a gamer in 2020 during a pandemic.
Do you see optimism in the gaming industry? What does it mean to be a gamer during this pandemic crisis?
You're
because
definitely
of
right.
COVID-19.
Yeah, it's definitely different, right?
Yeah.
And gamers are inherently introverted. So if you tell me, hey, Abhi, I'm more of an extrovert, but if you tell a gamer, hey, you're stuck at home now, you can't leave, and you're stuck only with your video games, I don't think they would mind at all. I think they would actually feel fine with it. Exactly, yeah. But a lot of things have changed. And there's kind of a positive way of looking at things and a negative way of looking at things. A little bit of the positives, and I kind of want to know what you think, Eduardo.
I've been working from home, and I had to set up a workstation for being able to work.
Right.
And I guess one of the good things is that since now I've got that, I can use the same setup for playing games, right?
You're right.
That could be
that's a good transition. Yeah.
Transition.
After we have our Zoom meetings and we talk about the company, what's going forward, I think I agree with you. I transition right into games because it's right in front of me everywhere. And that's an interesting point, actually, because a lot of young professionals who didn't really consider themselves as gamers, if they have the hardware running, you'll see a lot of them downloading some of the free AAA titles and getting into gaming. So I think we're going to see a lot of unconventional gamers that we would have thought in the past become gamers because of this pandemic, and it's really interesting. Have you heard that some of the major AAA title companies, like Call of Duty series, they released Warzone, and Valorant was released. So some of these games come from major game companies and are completely free.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But now that you're saying that, what would happen with small companies, startups?
You're right. Indie game developers, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. How would they be able to compete, right? Because before they have their niches, right, where they go to a certain customer that they know, and these customers like indie games or some of the smaller games. But now more of these indie game enthusiasts, if you will, these customers, they can just play a AAA title for free. And these AAA titles, since they're so polished and optimized, they're less likely to go to some of these indie game developers. So I think the indie game developers have to get a little bit more creative in their marketing or in some of their value propositions to get to compete with some of these free games. Yeah, but it's a great point that you bring up. And speaking of free games, some of the great things that the pandemic brought apart. I mean, we understand, and we want to make sure we let everyone know now. The pandemic has caused a lot of suffering, and we're completely aware of that. But in the gaming industry, there has been something to look forward to, and we're always optimistic. We always look forward. Some of the other things that we want to look forward to is a lot of people are building PCs now. Have you noticed this?
Yeah, I have. If you go to Amazon, you'll see that there are less components available.
You're right. Yeah, graphics cards, power supplies, CPUs. More specifically, power supplies. Why do you think this is happening?
I mean, I'm not completely sure, but I thought that it was because this pandemic crisis, and for some time the factories were not working at the 100%, especially in China. I guess that kind of affect the availability of products.
Right, you're right, because when COVID hit, it was the most interesting. It was right when Chinese New Year was going on. And during the Chinese New Year, there was 2 weeks where manufacturers, workers don't work. What do you think about some of the distributors? Because at that level too, restocking some of the components, there's some problems that COVID caused as well.
Yeah, you're right, because even if they are working now at the 100%,
right,
and even if they ship it, you need still people to work at the distributors in order to make sure that those items get to your house, right? Exactly. And if they're not working, then it's going to be complicated. Exactly. I can tell you from my own experience that, I was trying to order raw material.
Right.
And it was really difficult because they were not working. I mean, the store was there. They had the materials, the raw material, but they wouldn't be able to sell it to you.
Right.
So, I mean, there's really nothing we could do about that.
Right.
I mean, just wait. That's the only thing you can do.
I completely agree. And the stage of where our company is, prototyping and testing of our components is important. And we weren't able to prototype because of what's going on. So even on the startup level, there has been ramifications of what's going on in the pandemic. And some of the other negatives of this pandemic, there's a lot, but coming in the gaming industry as well, we've noticed that even though a lot of people are playing games, a lot of people are building PCs, and right now you can't really find the components on Amazon and coming forward. I think with these game developing companies coming out with the same game for free for everyone is great, and brings a lot of people, but there's not as much diversity in content, I would say.
I believe you.
Yeah, coming forward. That's kind of the state of the situation going forward thus far. And you're right, we've been seeing a lot of people building new PCs. And I'm glad that you're joining us today because you are an engineer. And you can explain some of the concepts going out before I go out and buy some components. And, right. A lot of marketing is used before you buy PC components, right? Right. And one thing I wanted to ask, if someone's building a PC, really going in, and if you're a tinkerer and you want to mess with parts, you might be caught off guard by some of this marketing, right? Manufacturers might say, if you buy a beefy air cooler or a big one, it might be as efficient or as a liquid cooler. But let's say you're building a custom liquid cooled PC, you're really a tinkerer and you want to make something unique. There's a lot of marketing out there on cooling components. And PC gamers really don't know what to go and what type of components to buy because there's a lot of information out there.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of gamers have these questions too. And I think it's good to know the science behind something so we can make the right educated decision. So the first question I have, the science behind cooling. Can you explain why electronic components overheat and why is it important to cool them? What is happening inside processors that make them overheat?
Sure. Any electronic device, let's say this one, will have electronic components, capacitors, magnetic devices, power sources, resistors. For instance, if you look at a resistor, the moment you have current flowing through the resistor, it'll dissipate certain energy in the form of heat, right? And that heat or that power, let's say, because power is watts, that power in watts, that's joules per second, that means energy per unit time. It's proportional to the square of the current. That's one case. And even if you only take a wire of a metal, that conducts electricity very well, it will still heat up just because you have current flowing through that wire, right? And when it comes to computers, and I guess you're talking about the CPUs, right? Because CPUs and GPUs are the components that dissipate or that generate most of the heat inside a computer. If you look at one of those, they have, thanks to nanolithography, they have billions and billions of transistors. Now, those transistors are like switches, electric switches. So they,
like the light switch in your room.
Yeah, kind of. But they work in a different way, though. But they have different states. So on, off, that means 1 and zeros. And what you have is, because they work or they switch on and off, or from 1 to 0, they switch really high rate. In the order of megahertz and gigahertz, that's 10 to the 6, 10 to the 9 cycles per second.
Oh, I see.
Then a lot of heat is, you have all that in such a small place, you can imagine how much heat is there. And the reason why you want to evacuate that heat as soon as possible is because you put in risk the integrity of the components. Right? Just in a very general form, if you get, I'm just generalizing, and this is just an average value. But if you have temperatures below 70 Celsius, then you can feel comfortable that your equipment or your devices are working fine. But if you have higher temperatures, then you can see that as a threat to the lifespan of your
if you're not cooling
device. But there is a misconception, though. Because if you are using your computer just for checking Facebook or
sending emails,
your computer is not really generating that much of heat. You are not loading your computer that much. So it is it becomes something important when you do really heavy tasks on your computer.
So you bring up a good point, talking about gamers building their own PC. If they're just going to be sending emails or playing browser games or nothing, you don't have to go on a beefy cooler.
No, you don't.
But let's say you're playing games, like really high strenuous games, you're streaming, and then you do some homework on the side as well. Right.
Because if you're doing something, I would say that puts a lot of effort in your computer. To make it simple, if you're a gamer, what you will see is that you will notice certain thermal throttling as well as less frames per second. Or if you are doing simulations or you're running a certain code or something on your computer, you will notice that your computer becomes slower. Because as the temperature is rising, then the computer, in order to protect itself, will lower the frequency
speed,
exactly.
So
the clock speed.
It's kind of like a fail-safe if you're not cooling.
Exactly, yeah. It'll shut down eventually if it reaches certain crazy value. The frequency of the transistors, that they go on and off, or bits of information. It has certain relation with the frequency that you see on your on your desktop, right? If you are following the performance
task manager and stuff like that. Okay, that's really interesting. So, when building a PC and knowing why your process is overheating and if you can evacuate that heat efficiently, what is the science behind the two options that most people go for, air cooling versus liquid cooling?
That's a great question. If you look at the process, fundamentally, they're kind of similar because you get the same thing. You get two modes of heat transfer. First, you get conduction from your IHS, or the integrated heat spreader.
On the CPU, right?
And that goes to your heatsink, right? You get that metal piece with fins, that's your heatsink. And then you evacuate the heat using convection. Convection heat transfer, which means that you transfer the heat from these things, or from your heatsink, to a fluid. Now, this fluid can be air that is being forced by a fan, or it can be also water that is flowing because of the action of a pump, right? But at the end of the day, I am evacuating the heat with this. And now there is a misconception again that people want to measure the temperature of the fluid, but we don't really care about that. I mean, we should care about the temperature of the component because that's what we are trying to protect, right?
Gotcha.
Now, you can see it. I'll use this analogy. Imagine that you are cooking something at your house,
right,
and you are burning it. Let's say it
happens
is
more
a
often
cake.
than not.
Yeah. I am not really a good cook, so that would happen to me. And you see that there is smoke coming out of the stove, right?
Right.
You can see that accumulation of smoke as the heat or the temperature. Let's say the temperature that is being generated, that increase in temperature on your chip, right?
Gotcha.
If you don't have any way to remove that smoke, eventually it'll be
burning in my kitchen.
Exactly. I mean, the accumulation of smoke will be so big that you couldn't be able to breathe.
In using that analogy, opening a window or turning on the fan.
Exactly. You're removing a resistance.
Gotcha.
So it's the same thing. What is happening is that you are generating, or the CPU is generating certain heat, and you can see it as a amount of energy per unit of time.
Gotcha.
Certain energy per unit of second. And you want to remove that as fast as possible, because if you remove it really quick, your temperature will remain very low. But if you don't remove it as a higher rate, and you basically have a really big resistance, what's going to happen is that in the same way that you would be accumulating smoke in your room, the temperature of the CPU will start rising.
Gotcha.
And that's what you want to avoid, right?
Gotcha.
You don't want to go to those 100 or 120 degree Celsius.
So specifically, the fluid being air or liquid, what's...
Yeah, the difference, although the process is the same, the difference is based on the properties that these two kind of fluids have, because they will have different thermal properties, like thermal diffusivity, convective heat transfer, and for liquids, it's going to be so much easier to evacuate that heat faster.
Gotcha. Than air.
Than air, exactly. So you will have, if you put them to compete, you could get the same thing up to certain level.
Gotcha.
But after that, you gotta go with whichever fluid has a better thermal properties, and that's gonna be water in this case.
But those are more seen on the extreme side of things, right?
Exactly.
But you won't really notice if your CPU, you're just browsing the internet or...
No, then there are cons and pros when it comes to implementing the solution, because one will be... Because, I'm going to put it like this, because if you want to create the same rate of removal of energy with air, you will have to make the air flow faster.
Oh, I see.
Because
more power in the fans.
More power in the fans, but the things that it will be noisier, and that will be not cool, I guess.
Yeah. No, if you're building a PC, you definitely don't want it to sound like a jet engine taking off, right?
Right. Yeah, because in both cases you try to have a turbulent flow.
Gotcha.
Turbulent flow is very diffusivity. It's very diffusive, and if it is very diffusive, in the same way you can transfer heat. So you want to transfer heat, taking advantage of that.
Gotcha.
And it's easier to get to turbulent flow if you are using water.
Gotcha. Than air.
Exactly.
And for the viewers who don't know, can you explain what turbulent flow is really quickly?
It's you get turbulent flow. You can classify the flow depending on different things.
Yeah.
But one of those things can be the regime, whether it is laminar or turbulent.
Oh, so you either have laminar flow or turbulent flow.
Laminar is if you open your faucet. I'm going to put it easy. If you open your faucet and the flow that you have is small enough, you will have a very nice stream of water.
Oh, like
where the liquid particles, let's say, will move smoothly. But whenever you have mixing, you have eddies, you have a chaotic behavior, that's something that is characteristic for turbulent flow.
And if we introduce this on the heatsink, that turbulent flow, this eddies, this chaoticness, it helps the evacuation of heat.
It helps, exactly, but it'll also require more power from the pump.
To do so,
exactly, because the pressure drop will be higher. The most efficient solution, you will have to find that sweet spot.
Gotcha.
Because you will have better heat transfer characteristics, but at the same time you are not being that efficient.
Gotcha.
So you want to find the right place where you use the least amount of energy to cool down your system.
Gotcha.
In the best possible way.
Most gamers, they don't go this deep into knowing the science behind things, and they usually buy components coming forward. But for those people that are tinkerers that want to know the science behind it, it's really interesting to be able to explain it like this.
Right, yeah, something that, and I'm pretty sure you will agree with me, when you go and try to get a component, it doesn't really tell you that much. I mean, it doesn't show you curve, it doesn't show you data, it doesn't tell you, it only says it cools down, it'll keep your computer cooler, but it doesn't really explain that or back up that information with data.
That's true.
Displaying you, hey, you can evacuate this amount of heat in this
and for
area.
People like us, we were bothered by that. Some people, though, they just want to know, will it work, right?
Yeah, exactly, because they don't provide that information. You cannot really compare, be able to know which one is the best option.
Gotcha.
In terms of efficiency, performance.
Yeah. So with the state of everything going right now, people are building PCs, right? And let's say they're building a custom liquid-cooled PC. With components like, if you're building a custom loop, where you map out your loop, you know where your processor, your motherboard is, you know where your reservoir is, and you draw where the piping would go, whether you're using soft tubing or hardline tubing. How do you choose components like pumps? Because usually, if I build a custom liquid-cooled PC, I'll just choose the most powerful pump because I don't care about the flow rate. It's the most powerful one on the market. It'll do the job. But that's not as efficient.
No, it is not, because look, if this is a pump, because you brought up flow rate. If I got a huge pump and I restrict its exit, what flow rate will you get? We'll get 0 because I'm stopping the flow. So it'll be 0. Okay. Of course, if I open it, then I'll have the maximum flow rate. Gotcha. And if I'm between, I'll have certain value. So that's why it would be very useful if a pump manufacturer would provide you a curve that shows you what's the behavior of flow rate versus pressure drop, as well as efficiency. Because in that case, if you do actually the math, you can know how much water per second you need, or the flow rate, right? Liters per minute, or cubic foot per second, or whatever that dimension you want to use. But with that, also knowing what's going to be the pressure drop that you will have in your whole system, because there will be pressure drop just because of friction in the loop, because there will be also losses in the radiator, losses in the heatsink. So if you calculate that, you can know what pressure drop you got, what flow rate you need, and based on that, you can go to a curve that can be provided by the manufacturer and be like, I need this specific pump, because 2 pumps may give you the same amount of water for that specific losses or pressure drop. Right. However, one will be working very efficiently, let's say, and the other one will be working very inefficiently. Gotcha. Which means that both will do the same job. However, one will be consuming 4 or 5 times more energy than the other one. It's like if you have a car. However, in one you will be burning only 1 gallon of gas, and the other one you would. Now, for the same job, you use a huge truck. And that will burn 4 or 5 times more gasoline. So you want to save that gas the same way. If you pick your parts in a correct way, you can be saving energy that you're consuming.
Right, so you heard it here first. If you're a pump manufacturer, or Eduardo, when we design a pump, we should probably include some real data, some real curvature, or the curves that people can follow as well. Because you're right, because when mapping out your custom loop, depending on your case, you might need more tubing, right? More area the water has to flow through, depending on where your components and what motherboard you're using, what water block you're using. All of these will change. And many gamers don't go through this information, but it's nice to know might be the proper way to choose like a component like a pump in the future.
Right, yeah.
Kind of going forward in this, when choosing liquid-cooled components, there's a lot of different materials you can go with. And if you're building a custom loop, you might see a water block or a heatsink that has aluminum, copper, or nickel. what is the difference and what component should I go with? Should I worry if I use a aluminum water block and nickel fittings? I mean, what's going on here?
I'll use the same analogy that I used before. You want to evacuate the smoke as fast as possible. So you want to have that resistance to be the minimum that you can have. When it comes to that, you can use a certain property of the materials that is known as thermal conductivity.
Gotcha. So this is the conduction that you
conduction, exactly. Because you are talking about the solid
metal.
Yeah. So guess what material is the best, the one that has the highest thermal conductivity?
Out of those three metals I named?
Well, no, out of all the materials available.
I would say metal, right?
Diamond.
Yeah. So you're telling me okay, no one take this idea. If I make a diamond heatsink with liquid coolant, I can get the most.
Well, it'll evacuate the heat faster, so that the conduction will be easier. From the IHS to the things. But if you're asking me the metals, like you get aluminum, it's a good conductor, but better conductors are copper, silver, gold.
Okay.
Yeah, I may be mistaken, but I think that silver is the best. I'm not gonna say the best, but the one that has the highest thermal conductivity
as well. Because I was about to ask our viewers, you can go to the donation link below, and we get enough money to make a diamond heatsink, we can make it. That's really interesting. Okay, as far as a gamer and what a gamer needs to know, we talk about different material on your heatsink and your radiator as well. Most people make the decision based on aesthetics. They might think chrome-plated aluminum or looks better than the nickel or more the bronze nickel.
Aluminum is used because it is cheap and lightweight.
Gotcha.
And it is a good conductor.
It's a good conductor as well. So between those three metals, it's really not that much of a difference. You're mostly going after what aesthetics.
Also, another important thing, it's not only heat transfer, it's also the structure, right? If you get something very heavy like copper, hanging from your CPU, then I don't know if it's gonna resist or no, because you have a plastic PCB,
casing,
casing.
Yeah, because we've seen some Asetek coolers that use a copper plate on the conduction, and then their radiator on their AIO might be aluminum.
Yeah, but it's small. It's small because as I'm telling you, copper. It is a better conductor than aluminum.
But it's heavier?
But it's heavier.
Gotcha. So if you were to...
A lot heavier.
A lot heavier than aluminum. That's very interesting. So are you planning to build a custom loop anytime soon?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So it's very interesting depending on if a gamer builds a custom liquid cooled PC than if an engineer builds a custom liquid cooled PC, because we can kind of see what you're thinking about when you're building these components, and it's interesting.
Well, you're also an engineer, so
we
can build it together.
We could build it together. It would probably take us at least a week or two to do all the math and the calculations, when someone else could probably go ahead and
we will share that.
We will share.
That's a good thing.
Exactly, guys. When we're building a custom liquid cooled PC, we'll do the math behind, choosing the right components, and we'll share that with you guys. If you guys are interested in knowing more information like that, put that in the comments below, and we'll put it on a website to share, so you guys can seem as smart as an engineer too when you're building something. Okay, so I guess, talking about what's going on in the world right now, more people are building PCs, the state of what's going on. You're seeing more unconventional gamers, just working on their Zoom meeting to building computers, getting into gaming. So it's really interesting to know, if you are that tinkerer, if you are that young professional and you want to build a PC, this is something, maybe you should think about before you pick your components.
That's true.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
The last question I wanted to ask you, Eduardo, is what are you looking forward to in the gaming space? VR, simulations, education? What type of games would we catch you playing in the future?
I like VR.
VR games?
VR, although I haven't used it, but, it calls my attention.
Gotcha.
I'm pretty sure that it'll be cool, you know?
Yeah, so we gotta build a VR-ready VR gaming PC. With everything going on in the world right now, gaming is a great, I wouldn't say distraction, but it's a great activity that you can do with you and your friends to kind of practice safe social distancing. And we definitely recommend, there's a lot of new games like we talked about now. If you're trying to build a PC, you might have to wait a couple of weeks because there's no components available, but maybe the distributors and manufacturers will get everything restocked. But definitely consider gaming. There's a lot of free games. And if you're considering building your own PC, and you want to build something that's an enthusiast level PC, like a custom liquid cooled PC, maybe you should think of some of this stuff that we talked about, and before you read the marketing on some of the stuff, the hardware that people are selling you, think about some of the science and do your own research. Is something we definitely recommend. But thank you so much for joining us on this episode of State of the Game. Just to let you guys know, we still have our gaming generation gap poll on our website. We were looking into how video games has changed in the American family throughout the years, and it's really interesting. We were asking questions on, like, have your parents played video games? Do you play video games with your parents now? Because we've been seeing that, the age gap in gaming has become smaller.
There is really a difference. I remember that my brother, he would love playing video games.
Yeah.
And my dad wouldn't let him play that.
Really?
For a long time. And then he would get, like upset and sad, and he would say, but I gotta tell you something. When I got my kid, I'm gonna play with my kid. I'm not gonna be cruel like you.
like you did,
Like you did, exactly.
But you have kids, Eduardo. Would you let your kids play for hours?
I do, but the things that I wasn't a gamer, and I'm not a gamer, so they cannot play with me. And they're very small.
Okay, also. Gotcha. How old are they?
4 and 2.
4 and 2, so
4
they are
years
very
and 2
young.
years old.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting concept. It's the generation gap in gaming. We have a poll out right now. We're writing a blog post bringing you guys the results from our poll. So if you're interested in filling out that information, go to our website, FLUIXengineering.com, and you'll be able to find our poll and some of our surveys. And you'll also be able to find our previous State of the Game podcast as well. If you guys would like to see future topics that we can cover on our podcast or videos, definitely let us know in the comments section below. Whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, connect with us at FLUIX Engineering, and we'll look forward to joining you next time on the State of the Game. Thank you, Eduardo.
Thank you.